He said, "Are you saying this is a faith-based movie?" I was like, yeah, I thought so. He said, "I'm not here to tell a faith-based story. I'm here to tell Bonhoeffer's story." Welcome back to another episode of Cultivating Truth. As stated a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to dive into a couple of Christian movies, or I guess I should say faith-based movies that are in theaters at this very moment. And today is the day where the well-awaited movie Bonhoeffer is finally out. And so today I wanted to bring on Shawn Mitchell all the way in Virginia.
What's up?
I'm here in Kentucky, but we met up, I guess now it's been about a month or so ago. And we had a pre-screening of Bonhoeffer, and today's the day where it's released. And so now that it's out, I'm going to say this is, well, I guess if you know the story of Bonhoeffer, you can easily find spoilers, so there's nothing too crazy. But we're going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into the movie and why we believe people should or should not watch the movie, and maybe some of the essential things that we can pull from the movie that would benefit the creative space at large. So I'm going to start off, Shawn. We saw this in your neck of the woods. What did you think of the movie?
Yeah. I mean, it was I thought that it was such a privilege and an honor to get to be a part of that pre-screening. Again, like back in like the DC area, a month or so ago, through ICVM, right?
Yeah.
And just like everything that was like, it was a very organized event. It was like, we didn't have too many problems except for, some small things that were kind of annoying in the moment, but still the whole process of actually getting to see the film, and get an early sneak peek of it was, pretty great. Overall, I thought the film was excellent. I think it captured the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, really well. Obviously, there's so much that, to Bonhoeffer's story that it's impossible to really, get it down to, even 2 hours, even though it's like, that's a pretty long time, but, it's just like, there's no way you can, boil down so much of that. And then there's always gonna be something missing. It's like, any story ever is like, if you put it into film, there's gonna be parts that get left out.
For sure. And so we were at ICVM, and what was the city? So it wasn't DC. We went to.
Oh, right. Yeah, it was DC area basically, but it's we were kind of in Alexandria-ish, Reston territory.
Reston. Yeah, it was a really nice area, nice part of town that we were at. Yeah, so we went to ICVM. We wanted to, we got our tickets. It's a networking conference for filmmakers. And so originally I wanted my son Abel to see the movie. Abel loves history. We had our DC trip. So we're all about, like, we're talking about World War II. We're talking about Great Depression, all the things. And I thought, the Bonhoeffer movie would be a good way to kind of end things. And, we had a little bit of trouble at first on just should a kid be at this movie, and I didn't really want the debate. And I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, well, Angel Studios is producing it. I don't suspect a bunch of like gore craziness, but I was fearful of that. So instead, I sent my son and my family to go see Wild Robot, which they loved. They had great reviews for that movie. I still haven't had a chance to see it yet, but
Same.
Yeah, I was super hyped to see it with you. And let me say, when the opening scenes start off, and like I said, we're gonna go through some spoilers. So if you do not want to know about the movie, or if you don't want to know ahead of time, nothing too crazy. We're not going to do a scene by scene analysis or anything, but we're going to talk about freely and openly some of the scenes and some of the elements that stuck out to us. So I will say I really enjoyed the opening scene. It was a film as a child, running, carefree, but passionate, strong. And I thought right then and there, I could see that they're going to be building off of this, as, at this point in his life, he's just very carefree, but he's very determined, and I thought that was a cool way without being cheesy, without being corny. Those elements of storytelling are foreshadowing what we, for most of us, I'm assuming, if we know the Bonhoeffer story, we know is going to come into play. We know that this man is a devoted, persistent dude who is determined. I mean, he was determined to take down Hitler. That's the story of Bonhoeffer. He was a German pastor. The popular Eric Metaxas book says what, Bonhoeffer, pastor, spy, martyr. And he was all those things. And so to see it on the big screen, I think was really cool. Cause I think whenever I was at seminary, I always thought that Bonhoeffer, like I thought that like us seminarians thought that he was cool, but I didn't know if like everyone else would think that he's cool. And, I definitely thought when I saw it on the silver screen, this is, certainly a story worth telling. It wasn't perfect. It was not, I'm not going to sit here and say it was the best movie ever, but I would say if you are a Bible believing Christian, or if you love history, if you love a good story, true stories, then this would be the movie for you. This is a great movie, to go see. I like what Brett McCracken said. I agreed. He had it on his like, top 10 recommended movies. And it wasn't necessarily like faith-based. It was just movies in general, with the Gospel Coalition. And he had Bonhoeffer up there, pretty high up there, I believe. And, he was honest. Like, it was a great telling of the story of Bonhoeffer. Had a couple of like pacing issues, and I think I felt that. Maybe I wouldn't word it like that in the moment, but now reflecting back, I can definitely see where there was just times where I was like, all right, it was kind of odd for me to go from here or there. That's just me being hypercritical. Right. If I had to pick out, as far as enjoyment, entertainment, I thought it was a great story, and definitely, is definitely challenging and thought provoking. And we talked a little bit about that after the movie. You made mention that it almost like preached at you, almost like it wanted, without saying explicitly, you wanted to go do something. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's essentially, in the modern day and age of, agendas being in any film, and that's not, let's not get it twisted of like, when I say that, we ascribe that to one political party or one activist group or one charity organization. It's across the board. If someone makes a film, 9 times out of 10, the objective is to make a point. But what I liked about Bonhoeffer specifically, is that his story overall, it is just like a cry for the Imago Dei, right? And the film, it captures that extremely well. It because it's talking about just the bare bones of what it means to be a human being made in the image of God. It's such a relatable message that I don't feel like it has to try so hard to like make that point evident. So just keeping it, I think, obviously it's a complex story, right? But the heart underneath it is simple. So I think that gives it a lot of, it gives the film a lot of power in a sense to actually, get on the platform it wants to be on, and, just say what it needs to say. But then like, at the same time, you're enjoying the film. But that also has to do with like production elements and, all that stuff. And because sometimes, we'll go see, any, well-meaning Christian film, or any, it doesn't be Christian, but, and even those elements of production, like just there are some frames that just, was that shot good? It was kind of like, or just like awkward, or pacing too, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about that already, but all those elements together sort of shape the overall experience. But I think overall, Bonhoeffer, at the heart of it, because its message was something that almost anyone can relate to and find intrinsic value in, I think that's what gave it its success in not being an overly preachy film.
Yeah, for sure. So I was at NRB last year, National Religious Broadcasters, and I think back in February, and I saw that they had like some kind of some screening for this, and I was so stoked, man. I was like, oh yes, I'm about to see this, and it's going to be nearly a year before it comes out. It was just a preview. I was so disappointed. And
they got
the cool thing, I know. But the cool thing is I got to meet the director. He was actually there. I'm going to botch his name, but Todd Komarnicki. I believe, and I didn't know anything about him before, and he pitched it. I could tell he's super passionate about it. One of the things that stuck out in what he said that resonated with me, and I took this going into the movie, so I do think that it's important for moviegoers to understand how movies and stories are told. Is he used the words, "This is my Bonhoeffer story." He said, "I am the one telling this story. This is not Eric Metaxas. This is not Angel Studios.
Right.
Other people joined forces. They jumped on board. They liked it. They invested, whatever. This is his, he's the storyteller, and he's going to tell his perspective as if he were to write a book. It would be the same as if, you know, different people with different themes as a writer or director, you know, they have different tones and elements that they want to make sure gets brought out. For example, Christopher Nolan, if he were to tell the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer versus Wes Anderson, it's going to be very different, drastically different. You know, one's going to be more suspenseful. One's going to be more simplistic. One's going to be like low set and not as much, you know, bright and colorful symmetry. One is going to be, did he die or not? You know, like we don't know. And so I liked that. And, you know, for those who go into the movies, I think that that's important to understand, is especially, you know, stories that are based on true events, is we're actually just watching a story that's through the lens of the director, and we need to respect that. We might not always like it. We might not be a fan. I know I talked to a handful of people and they were like, "Oh man, they left out this or they left out that." Absolutely. But as you said, you got 2 hours. You got 2 hours to tell the story that you want to tell. You got to jump through big periods of time, and that's perfectly fine. And when I thought through him saying that, it made me kind of appreciate some of the movies in the past that maybe I've also been critical over, especially true stories. It was like, oh man, but it wasn't well because I had a preconceived thought or expectation that they were going to have something in this movie, and because that expectation was not met, then it kind of disappointed.
Right.
So I would encourage the moviegoer, just go and enjoy the story, enjoy this person, Todd's version of the story, and it's going to be probably the best Bonhoeffer movie I think that's ever been out there, and probably going to come out. So appreciate it and enjoy it. One of the things that Todd also said, whenever I had the privilege of talking with him, which, by the way, I think I told you this in person, but I was curious to see what he's done before, and he wrote Sully, which gave me some like, oh, okay, I feel like that's a good kind of serious biopic movie. If you know the story of Sully, Tom Hanks played him, about the plane. But funny enough, he was actually one of the writers for Elf, out of all things. So I didn't know going into it if this was going to be a comedy, or are we going to take this seriously? And he's a pretty cool guy, and I applauded him for having, secular credentials, but stepping into the faith circle. And he like sparked. He jumped. He said, "You saying this is a faith-based movie?" I was like, yeah, I thought so. It's Angel Studios. Isn't that like a thing? I was so thrown off whenever he said that. And he said, "I'm not here to tell a faith-based story. I'm here to tell Bonhoeffer's story." And he said, "Now, Bonhoeffer's story is a story of faith, and that's going to come out." He said, "But I'm not here to make a Christian film. I'm here to tell Bonhoeffer's story." And knowing that, I've sat on that for months now, after hearing him and anticipating the movie. I was so curious to see how is that going to play out. And I think you're with me on this. It was a very appropriate preaching movie. Entirely. It was one of the, I don't know if I've ever heard the gospel so explicit and clear in a film. And the best part was, I didn't really think it was cheesy because it just fit with what was going on. There were moments where a lot of moments actually, where we're listening to Bonhoeffer give sermons, and he's opening up the word of God and saying, "Thus says the Lord, not of man, but of God." And he's breaking it down for us. And then the pinnacle moment where we're waiting to see what's going to happen with Hitler. And are we about to watch, Hitler go down? Which, once again, if you know your history, this shouldn't be too much of a major spoiler. but it builds with suspense with the music and the scenes cutting back and forth, all while he is passionately preaching the gospel. And I go back to his words on, my goal wasn't to make a faith-based movie or a Christian film. My goal was to tell the story faithfully of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And I thought, well done. Well done.
Yeah.
You did well. And Bonhoeffer would have preached. He would have preached the gospel. And it wasn't done in some cheesy, let me hold your hand and out of nowhere in the middle of the train station. And it doesn't make sense whatsoever. Not saying that giving the gospel any given place, you should do that.
Right.
But a lot of times these stories don't make sense in their pacing. And it's kind of jarring. And I didn't feel that way with this movie. What'd you think?
Not at all. I the complete opposite of, the cliche Christian trope movies that, it's the wise sage character finds the reckless youth or whatever type of other trope. God's Not Dead obviously reversed that and tried that too, but it was still equally as corny. Right. But, I think that it was such a, like you said, I think what you said, you nailed it when you said that, the context of the film matched the context of the gospel presentation, right? Like it wasn't like this just jarring moment where, we have to say this in order for it to make the Christians like appease, right? It was just like, the gospel is evident from, opening scene to credits, right? Like the whole thing is just like, if you just sit there and actually like, if you're looking for it, I think, the gospel is just, is there. And it at no point does it rub you the wrong way. So I'm like, my sort of framework for a good film, right, is that anyone can go see it and understand the intent of the director. I feel like if both those things have been achieved, then, I feel like it's always going to be a success. And that's where I feel like Bonhoeffer, I mean, really, even though it has, like you said, the Angel Studios branding on it and, all that, like, you would believe the way it's kind of like in what circles it's marketed in, you would believe it's like a faith-based film. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if this is on the, director's, heart or not, Todd's heart or not, but, like, I don't know how much control he has on that, right? So maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But it's refreshing to hear someone who is a director that's saying, yeah, I'm not trying to make a Christian film. I feel like, we've long lived in this divide of, secular versus sacred. And, we're no longer talking about, okay, but is it good? Good objectively in quality and execution, but also good in the message. Because you could have a Christian film that has a Christian film, right? Like it's, marketed and labeled as such, and it has a terrible message. Again, I harken back to God's Not Dead. Yes, I understand that, the whole point is to like somehow make the audience, I don't even know who the intended audience is for that movie, because it's like, is it for atheists, for people to come to God? Well, if I was an atheist watching that movie, I would feel awful. I would feel like I'm the scum of the earth. Like, thanks. Like, and I don't really think I would want to know more about your religion or your faith. And then because, they paint the atheist as, always being the bad guy, and the Christian always has the moral superiority over the atheist. And in a sense, I understand why they're saying that, but, reality says that, Christians, well-meaning Christians, like we saw in the Bonhoeffer movie, right? Christians were going to the church, but were allowing complicitly to partner up with the state. Mm-hmm. And, that's so antithetical, whatever the word is, to the gospel, right? Like Jesus calls us to be separate from the world and its powers, its structures, its systems. Not that we shouldn't be involved, right? But, yeah. So anyway, circling back, I think that Bonhoeffer it again executes so well in getting that narrative out without having to dumb it down for the audience or make it this whole like moment, because it's not a moment. It's the whole story. The whole story gives you the moment, I guess you could say, in its conclusion, when you kind of like leave the theater and you ponder like what you just saw, and like you think about the fact that it's a historical reality, and like it's like, wow, look how God moved in such a mighty way. Like he allowed the church to go through this corruption, but look how much redemptive work has come out of that, right? Like, so yeah, kudos to Todd for like, having the wherewithal to really approach that with a story centric heart first. Cause I think if he did it any other way, like I think like if he focused primarily on the, like, let's say, I mean, I obviously know the historical reality is like, it's probably most of his basis for the story, obviously. But like he wasn't so, tied into the politics and the history of like the whole thing that it just became, it felt like like a documentary. You know what I mean? Like it felt like stale but he had enough, elements of, telling, Bonhoeffer's full story, like including his childhood and like just fleshing out the whole thing to really get a emotive feel. And then obviously having the gospel evident within the film. Yeah, I think it just makes for a recipe of a great film, regardless if it is a faith-based film or a secular film.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about production, and I definitely want to end eventually with the kind of the meaning or the takeaway, because I think that that's important and help people. I want people to always have their own takeaway, but sometimes open discussions or hot takes help us kind of toil the ground and soil of our mind to begin to think about maybe something maybe a little bit deeper or with a different perspective. So production, I thought it was a good film. Like, sometimes I'll see a good story or a good film and I'm like, ugh, the production just looks a little bit lackluster. I mean, it's 2024. I think they filmed this last year and maybe the year before. It's not hard. It's not hard to do some of the basic things right. But when you're, figuring out that all of these actors are, I think most of them from Germany. That was wild. I thought that the guy that they got was spot on. I just believed it. Like I just accepted. And I love that in biopics. Like it's one of the most frustrating things when I watch a biopic. The look matters, man. Like if I know what this person looks like if I paid attention, I have to believe that that's that person. And, the older you get in time, I think it's a little bit easier because, pictures are a little bit rough. But man, I can't stand when I just don't believe that person is them or I see the actor. They could have easily went with like a bigger named actor and I would have just saw that person, but I didn't. I didn't know this guy. Now maybe in Germany, he's a lot bigger from my understanding. I think he actually I could be getting this wrong, but if I remember right, when I sat through that early preview, I believe they said that this guy quit acting. Actually, he was done. Wow. And he got the script and he kept rejecting it over and over again. Like I said, I could get some of the stuff off, so anyone who's commenting, don't completely axe me. But if I remember right, he fell in love with this Bonhoeffer, and he wanted to portray him. Can't remember all the details on faith or anything like that, but I thought that was cool that you could get lost into that. The look, the picture, that was clean. It looked good. There was some good angles. Like I said, not really production, but more on the story. There was just a couple of pacing issues where I was like, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Why are we looking at this? Very few though. But overall, I thought it looked good. What about you? You're a visual guy. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, as far as visuals go, I'm a big fan of, like, just if you can craft the world that you want us to be in, like do it and do it well. I thought that I don't know. I guess with Angel Studio is sort of in your pocket, right? Like you can do a lot of things well. Like all the props, all the time period pieces, costumes, like everything. Obviously, I know that these people's jobs, right? It's like that's what they get paid to do. But I just thought at every point I was just like you said, it's almost like they did their jobs. I always know this is true about almost any profession. Your job it has reached its perfection when your client doesn't even realize what you've done. in the sense that your client is so enthralled with, the product of whatever you have. So like, and that extends all the way to iPhones, right? Like we never questioned how to like look at this thing and say, okay, but how is the pixel and I'm sure some overthinkers do that, but myself included. But, most of us were just like, wow, look at that. And, we're mesmerized. But that goes for a good film, right? Like when you are able to, on a production standpoint, from the acting to, like sound design, music, like all those things just have to work together. At any one point, if one of those things like isn't right, it becomes jarring or noticeable, and it takes that person out of the world, out of the, that you're trying to build. So, and I, it was I will say there were at points where I did feel, again, the pacing issue, where, it's kind of like those lulls during like, specifically like, the planning stages, I would say, of, them trying to like, make a plan to take down Hitler and the regime. It was kind of like, toward like the 3/4 of the way mark, maybe something like that. It just felt, because there obviously wasn't as much going on production wise, it felt a little stilted. It felt a little slow, but it's that brewing, I think, also that kind of gives the movie, it's sort of, rising action toward the end, so it does sag, but I think it's for the best of the film because it gives you the anticipation of the, riding out to the very end of the movie. Because, and like those parts, like, obviously, you have like I was like minimal underscoring. And the acting was great. I just felt like some of the shots just felt kind of samey. Like everything basically 3/4 of the way through just felt kind of dark, moody, angsty. But, this is, flashbacks or the flashbacks to the planning, and then, present time, Bonhoeffer's in the prison and stuff like that. So it's like, there's, because of those elements, everything just felt a little too, what's the word? Homogenous, I guess you could say, in that section. But that's not a terrible thing in the entire context of the film. I think, again, in context, it helps, in a sense, to build that anticipation to the end. But yeah, production wise, I think it was a stellar film. And it sets an example for, I believe, other secular and, faith-based films to, follow for the future.
Yeah. And my hope is, with setting a good bar on some of these historical, but, known, but not like, uber popular. And there's a number of people who I know have never heard of the name Bonhoeffer, but my hope is that, there's more, heroes of the faith per se, stories to be told. I'll talk to a lot of guys in the film industry, and some of them will only want to just focus on, just biblical stories. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm also very interested in hearing some of the people of, over the last 100 years, some amazing stories connect, modernity and, things that are, going on, maybe even in today's culture. And that's what I thought was cool is, so what, this is going on in the 40s, right? World War II era. But the director was very purposeful in including Dietrich Bonhoeffer's, love for the Black church. And I thought, okay, so see, once again, now you're going back in time. You're telling a story from the past that can resonate today. There is still a lot of division amongst the white, American and Black American church. And Bonhoeffer was like, no, this is great. I want to take some of this with me, And, and I thought that was, that could resonate with anyone and everyone today, and an appreciation rather than this separation, and there was some jokes and there was some laughter, and, he was like, no, I think this is great. They're like, well, why does someone like you want to be over here? And I think that makes a good movie, right? Is if I can watch a period piece and I can still, appreciate elements and themes that could affect me today. What else stuck out to you? Did anything, challenge you or stick out that you're like, oh, I can take this home with me?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said before, like the whole movie's, heartbeat is the Amando Day, right? And like, you know, the race component to the film, I thought was amazing because like, I didn't know that aspect of Bonhoeffer's story. I didn't know he came to the States to study at seminary. But like seeing like at least the film's portrayal of his relationship with the black church and, arguably that's, you know, where he was, you know, really saved or like he had actually coming to a real saving faith, I'd say. Um, you know, just shows that like, you know, God exists much broader than, you know, your four walls of your church. If you know, never have left home or whatever, or you've been in the same church your whole life, you know, it's just it's such a true thing when you go to experience God in another place or it's another context. And then you see that it's like, oh, wow, God is breathing. He's alive. He's real. In the sense that you finally you get a fuller picture of who God is when you see him moving in ways that you've never seen before. Cause you're like, whoa, like I didn't know God could do that. But you know, sort of more on like, I guess the quasi political side, you know, I think it's such a great message and a reminder, especially with, you know, I might get ousted and Aaron, you might never have me back on your platform if I say all this and the comments light up, but you know, I think it's a timely message for the church to look at, you know, how in bed we are with our current political landscape. And this isn't a shot at, you know, the current election results that we just have with, you know, President like Donald Trump, coming back to office. But in general, I feel like Christians will often find their savior in a political figure. And, you know, it's such a ludicrous thing because in my opinion, you know, either way, you know, we often hear things like, oh, pick the lesser of the two evils and all that. Reality is that no matter who's in office, human nature scales in government, right? And by that, a human nature, I mean, yes, the good, the imago Dei, but also the corrupted, the wickedness, the evil, the things you never hear about, you know, but again, that's on either side of the aisle. You split. So, I think it's, you know, I think the message from Bonhoeffer, at least the, again, political side of it, actually be the salt and light of the earth and be one with Christ and follow him. Because look how blind the church was, at least in the film, right? And in reality, because I mean, like, you know, just think about like if the church actually said something from the jump and was like, hey, world, this whole Hitler dude, no, because God says, everyone deserves a humanity, a life. And it's like, if the church just had the guts to say something, right? That, you know, who knows what have happened in history? Who knows? I mean, just that point. But the main thing is that we can't be so close and trusting the politics, the government of it all to, you know, make us like, to feel secure, to feel safe. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, that's part of their responsibility, but ultimately, we need to be so much more in the Word of God and trusting in God instead of all of that. Because at the end of the day, the government will fail us. The politician will fail you. They're not gonna save you from whatever mess you're in. That is God's primary role in our lives, right? So yeah, that's kind of the two main takeaways is like, you know, seeing God in a new context and then also, you know, being more about his kingdom than, you know, the earth's and man's kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I definitely think so. You know, there was moments in the movie where as someone who's sitting, you know, just being entertained, not trying to dissect it or anything, you know, when they would put the copy of the Mein Kampf on the podium and at the altar and all that stuff, I was just sitting there going, wow, I cannot believe that this stuff actually happened. You know, like this is, it's fascinating when you think of like your history and that's where I think, you know, good storytellers, right? Give me that. That is a treat. That is a reward of me watching the movie is that I find history fascinating and that people movements, cultural, which, you know, we study this stuff. This is I'm all about this, understanding cultural movements. And it was just, you know, still baffling just to sit there and watch and go, this really happened. Like this, like if you put this as fiction, I would sit there and go, yeah, this would never happen. But no, this actually genuinely happened.
Right.
And then likewise, so that was kind of a consuming takeaway that I'm, getting rewarded from watching the movie. But there was also, without telling me, without having, Bonhoeffer look me in the eyes and at the camera and say, get off of your behind and go out there and preach the gospel. That never happened. We understood the cost of discipleship through the story of the movie, not because of necessarily the preaching of it, but I was challenged. I'm sitting there going, what am I doing? Like, do I really believe in what I believe in? Like, you got brothers like Bonhoeffer here who's risking it all, in order to make sure that the gospel is out there. And that's good. If it had some kind of plug in at the end, or if he got in our face and said, what are you doing? He yelled at us, it doesn't have the same effect. But I believe, especially with the handful of people I've talked to after watching the movie, I think it does have that effect. I think it's going to push and encourage us to fully understand the cost of discipleship. And doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have to fight Hitler. Hopefully we don't have to have that interaction in our life, but to do the right thing, even when no one else is speaking, I thought that was powerful. And so final take, and then we got to wrap it up. Do you recommend this movie?
Yes, 10 out of 10. Well, 3 out of 10. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. A point off for pacing and maybe a few other things, but honestly, it is a great film. I honestly think Todd kind of invokes kind of like a Nolan-esque feel into this movie. Not obviously the super crazy, like almost
is this a dream or
right. Yeah, not all that stuff, but like science fiction, obviously, but in sense of just high execution, really good storytelling. 9 out of 10.
Got it. Yeah, I think I would give it an 8.5. I'm gonna be a little just picky, but 8.5 is really good. And I'll give it 8.5 on what I thought. How I thought, just overall execution and whatnot. But I definitely would recommend it. Anyone in the church, this is a story worth noting. If you like history films, as stated earlier, if you like true stories, then this is a story for you. And my hope is that positive conversations are going to come after it. Following what is the cost of discipleship, talking a little bit more about Bonhoeffer's heart. And, I think it would be great. Even a bonus conversational piece would be, let's talk about this division amongst the white and black churches of America. And let's see maybe some bridge or some grace that's, going to be poured upon, and maybe some unity and spirit of togetherness is my hope.
Yeah.
So,
amen.
Well, that was our review. I know that there was a number of other things we could have went through. We could have talked about some more on the acting, some of the storytelling, some of the actors, but I thought that this was a fair review. But at the end of the day, if you are listening to this, go support this movie. Go support these stories of faith-based individuals and storytellers who want to make these stories known. You as a moviegoer are an investor. You are putting your dollars into movies, whether you like them, if you don't care for the company or whatever, you are an investor. These organizations need your money, and they cannot produce more unless they are having people attend these shows at the theaters. That's the biggest indicator of success, is who shows up at the theater. So please go out and support this movie, especially if you are a fan of Bonhoeffer. You'll enjoy this. Just my recommendation. Come with no expectation. Sit there, enjoy the movie, and hopefully you'll take away some positive truth and also be entertained at the same time. Shawn, thank you for joining us today. And you have a blessed day, brother. And everybody watching, you too, take care. Have a good, special day in the Lord.